I am. Look how big that is, and that one's smaller, less to carry.
In 110 degrees.
I've had to, when it comes to political rallies, sometimes I have to go like half a mile away because like the parking lot's like somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yikes.
There you go. I didn't put you in focus. So.
Okay. You didn't?
You were.
I was not.
No.
Okay.
Right. That's the
I need to get that fixed.
It's making noise.
All right, well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. So you're running again, and you're hoping to be the Pima County Attorney. Once again, I wanted to address quite a few topics with you.
Sure.
One of those is cash bills. Your website says cash bill has proven to be antiquated and nonsensical. Smart justice just requires a new approach. Tell me how you feel like you have kind of driven a new system and what you're hoping to do if you were to be elected again.
Well, unfortunately, the last 3.5 years have proven that the cash bail system remains a failed program that fails us on both ends of the spectrum. And by that I mean, I have way too many cases piled up on a list now where someone is arrested for a violent crime, then they're given a cash bond by the court at their first hearing, and then they pay that bond and end up back out on the streets to finish the harm that they had started. That's a huge public safety issue. On the other end of the spectrum, we have far too many people trapped in the jail for no reason other than they can't pay a $500 bond on a low-level, non-violent, victimless crime when they should be in a hospital. And everyone knows they should be in a hospital. They're there for substance use disorder, they're there for mental illness, or both. And so cash bail continues to fail us on both ends of the spectrum. It's a frustration that the chief and the sheriff and I have all approached the Board of Supervisors and the city with over and over again. We are, in fact, finally in the middle of a massive change where initial appearances, that first hearing, is going to leave city court, and it's going to go back where I long argued it is supposed to be, which is Superior Court. But until we get a legislative change up at the state legislature to eliminate cash bond, we're going to continue to have cash playing a role where it just shouldn't play a role at all.
You've also set some low bonds. Can you tell us a little bit about why you may have done that?
Give me some more information so I know what that means.
So in addition to trying to get rid of cash bonds, there are some bonds that you may have set that are a little lower. Perhaps some critics may say a little too low for the crime. Since we aren't getting into specific cases, what is your reasoning for setting lower bonds than maybe some of your predecessors?
So this is a really important education point. We don't set bonds at all, in fact, and that's a point of confusion. We make the best argument that we can to the court at that first hearing, and the judge has exclusive power to order whatever level of bond that they want. And again, I'll return back to those cases that we mentioned before, where we have argued strenuously, I would say persuasively, for a really high bond for someone who is clearly an ongoing threat of harm. But at the end of the day, the judge makes the decision, and that's the final word.
Thank you for your response on that. I want to move on to the next topic. Is there anything else that you wanted to say on that topic at all?
I think we're good. Thank you, though.
Perfect. So the next topic would be the death penalty. You want to end the death penalty. Could you please explain to me why you feel that way?
So in 2020, I promised every single day of my first campaign that if I were to be elected Pima County Attorney, we would dismantle the apparatus of the death penalty and we would not be seeking the death penalty under any circumstance. And I said it every single day because I wanted the choice to be very clear and the outcome of the vote to be very clear. And then I kept my promise, and we did in fact dismantle the death penalty and we've made sure to not seek it since that time. And there are myriad reasons for this. It is an absolute failed policy. A recent statewide study just a year and a half ago has proven yet again that you cannot separate race from the death penalty. It will always impact people of color at an alarming rate over white people. It is inherently racist in its formation and in its outcome. It deprives victims for decades of closure on their cases. We have only to look at death row right now, and the last 2 cases where there were actually executions were 41 and 42 years after the case had happened, and in fact when most victims were no longer even alive to see the conclusion of their case. Not to mention the cost ultimately to the taxpayer. It is a fortune that I assure you Pima County cannot afford. We need to spend our precious limited resources on the cases right in front of us right now and focusing on victim crime and public safety. It wasn't a promise that was easy to effectuate. There were a lot of very sensitive and delicate victim meetings. I was humbled and astounded by the grace of victims who understood that we would not be seeking the death penalty on their cases. And frankly, it's completely gone by the wayside. It's not a concern anymore because we focus on, especially on first-degree murders, which is where the death penalty applies. Where it's appropriate, we ask for natural life, and that means the person is never to be released. That is, in fact, a sentence of death. We have chosen the place and time eventually where they will die in prison. And we don't take that lightly either. But we have found that nothing has been lost by abandoning the death penalty, and in fact, much has been gained. And if I am reelected, I will continue to carry out that promise.
Thank you for your response on that.
Of course.
So I want to move on to the next topic, which is sentences fitting the crimes. You have a newly enhanced unit to prevent and remedy wrongful convictions and unnecessarily expensive punishments, which you kind of have touched upon. Tell me how you feel like you've delivered that and whether you feel like you would do anything different or expand that if you were to be reelected.
So when I arrived in office, I discovered that the wrongful conviction unit in place had a partially retired attorney devoting about a quarter of time to these cases. And what we knew in Pima County was that a whole lot more energy needed to be dedicated to making sure we were looking at appropriate cases that came in upon application and delivering for justice and allowing a second review if the case called for it, if the courts call for it. The courts send us cases back on appeal from many, many years ago, and there's a lot of work to be done there. So we formed our conviction and sentence integrity unit as we promised, and there has been plenty of work that the courts have sent back. Old death penalty cases get dozens of layers of review, and those cases have come back to us. Not to mention that Prop 207 was wildly popular in Arizona. It legalized marijuana, but it also factored in expungement. Arizona's very first opportunity to expunge a prior conviction. Shortly thereafter, the legislature added sealing, the opportunity to seal your old file. And expungement and sealing is pro-rehabilitation. It encourages people to move past their past mistakes, to grow, to be employed, to be housed, to go back to school. And so we've had plenty of work in that arena, supporting people who are coming back and wanting to be productive citizens in our community again. And that's pro-economy and that's pro-Pima County.
And there are a few stories that I've done personally on expungement records. The University of Arizona has partnered with the city of Tucson. Does the county at all plan on perhaps partnering with the university or has in the past?
Well, in fact, I think that's actually all at our direction. We were the very first entity on the day Prop 207 took effect, July of 21. We set the stage. We set a form on our website at the office, which we still encourage people to go. It only takes a minute, and you submit an application to expunge your record, and our prosecutors do the work for people. We don't want this to be a difficult obstacle. We want to be promoting this opportunity at a second chance.
Thank you so much for your response on that one.
Of course.
I also wanted to talk about the Second Chance program, Second Chance Tucson. Explain kind of like what that is to our viewers. It gives a second chance to felons, to other people that have been in jail or perhaps prison. How do you feel like you've shaped that since you've been in office?
Well, first, I want to respectfully note that people have been working in this space for a long time. And in fact, back when I was in private practice, I was a huge proponent of this. I was actually the lawyer for several large-scale construction and fiber optics companies that were wanting to hire people coming back out of prison who are highly skilled and can contribute immediately to the workforce. And so now, obviously, as Pima County Attorney, I remain a huge proponent of this. Look, it's very simple. Most people who go to prison are going to eventually come back home. And the question must always be, do we want to brand them a felon and keep them trapped apart and separate and away from employment and housing and education? Do we want them to be vulnerable? And the answer, of course, is no. That's how people just end up right back into a criminal cycle. We want people to thrive. We want to welcome them back home. We want to make it easy to get back on their feet and to support that. Because I'll tell you personally that employers will tell you that hiring people coming back home gives them the most hardworking and loyal employees that they've had. And this is how you break the cycle of criminality. This is how you cut deeply into the crime rate. And this is a healthier and safer community at the end of the day.
Do you feel like you've expanded the program in any way, or what do you feel like has been your contribution to that?
Well, I'm a huge partner of Second Chance, and then I help run Fresh Start. And Fresh Start is a massive expo every October, and in fact, we're growing now. Fresh Start International is growing to multiple forums per year, and that is an opportunity to go to the TCC or go to an off-site location, and it's a one-stop shop. The whole floor is an employment fair, services, driver's license, everything you might need to kind of restore coming back home. And then the entire second floor is a courthouse. And that's where I've partnered to bring in judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, so that people can come in and assess what's left of their case, fines, restitutions, warrants, things that are hanging over their head and making it hard to get back on their feet. And this has been wildly successful.
Thank you so much for your response on that one. I did want to move on to the diversion program. So as you know, a former prosecutor who was part of the last county attorney's administration, for those that have not heard of this, filed a complaint about you with the state bar about the Lewis Taylor case. You entered into a diversion program. What's your comment on that, and do you feel like it could affect your campaign?
Well, first we should say that the former administration has filed any number of allegations against me, public records lawsuits. They have stayed active, unfortunately, in undermining our work towards public health and safety, which is unfortunate. But what I can say is that after the 22 allegations that Mr. Berkman filed with the State Bar, I was asked to watch a video recording of a lecture from a few years ago, and then they accepted my participation certificate and then closed the entire matter some months ago. And more importantly, certainly for me, it's a point of an honor and a good feeling. Yesterday, I taught at the State Bar Convention statewide in Phoenix, and I taught ethics at the invitation of the State Bar, which I've been doing for over 10 years, and I'll do it again this fall. So needless to say, I'm in very good standing with the State Bar. And to the extent that I'm not in good standing with the prior administration, I'm okay with that. I came in promising to make massive change and modernization to a system that had been running one way for over 40 years. The most expensive system we could have possibly had with minimal results. Tough on crime, mass incarceration, the war on drugs, and it was making us less healthy and less safe. And I have made massive change, and the prior administration is not a fan of that, and I'm okay with that.
Well, we've talked about a range of topics, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell our viewers what you would like to say. Any topics that I have not touched upon that you're strongly campaigning for?
Well, I appreciate it. We've covered a number of the changes we've made. I think another massive one is that we treat children as children. Instead of prosecuting as many children as possible in adult court, we now keep every child possible in juvenile court, every single one that the law allows us. And that's been a dramatic shift that we're hoping for much more successful outcomes. But I want to say this. As much change as we have brought in, data-driven, solution-oriented change, I want to make clear that it's working. And this is where correct factual information is really important. This week, we are 43% down on homicide from 2 years ago countywide, and 39% down on robbery. We're down in every violent crime marker across the board. We are recovering more quickly and better than other similarly situated cities across the nation, recovering better from COVID and from the violent crime spike. We should be, as a community, trumpeting that. We should be advertising it. It's good, of course, for public safety. It's good for the economy. We should be advertising that this place is recovering better than most, with incredible collaboration between the county and the city and the law enforcement and my office. I can't wait to build on this success. We have a lot to do with our neighborhoods and our small businesses, with open air homelessness and fentanyl, and the think tanks that we put together to battle violent crime so successfully. I have no doubt we're going to shift that, and we already have, into tackling the issues of the day. I think I've made the case for a second term.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for your attention to this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.